Hello, I'm Attorney Todd Leneve. Welcome to West Virginia Gun Law. In 2023, our state's legislature took up and passed the Campus Self-Defense Act, also known as Campus Carry. The governor signed that bill, and 90 days later it became an official law of this state. However, in a nod to the public colleges and universities that would be required to implement the law, they were given until July 1st of this year, 2024, to get their policies in place and make adjustments to their campuses to accommodate people carrying concealed firearms. And so now that July 1st has come and gone, and now that most colleges and universities are either back in the full swing of activities or about to be, I thought this was a good time to talk about how the Campus Carry bill affects West Virginians and those who are attending our schools at the collegiate level. So let's take a minute and dig into that today. Stick around. So, as I said, in 2023, the West Virginia legislature took up this bill that had been, I think, attempted a couple of times previously. There was a lot of outside of the legislative session work that went into lobbying and getting the pieces in place to be able to have a chance to get the bill passed. And last year, everybody seemed satisfied with the framework that was put forth, and that bill did in fact get passed. So we now are living in the age of Campus Carry here in West Virginia, joining a number of other states that do allow concealed carry on their college campuses, and we are seeing the implementation of that just now beginning to roll out. So again, the law became effective here in West Virginia on July 1st of this year, meaning that people who were employed as faculty or staff at our state's public colleges and universities could begin carrying a concealed firearm on campus, provided that they met the various conditions under this new law. And now that students are back, the students are also protected by being able to carry firearms as long as they meet the provisions of the law. Now, it is important to remind you that this applies to public colleges and universities. Privately owned colleges and universities do not have to comply with this law because they are private entities. But the state's public land grant institutions are bound by this. So that would be a number of schools here in the state, West Virginia University, Marshall University, Fairmont State University, Concord University, a whole host of schools around the state of West Virginia are impacted by this law, and impacted in a good way because we're just talking about making campuses safer. So historically, any private citizen could actually go onto a college campus with a firearm, and it wasn't unlawful. And a lot of people didn't realize that. And it's interesting, as I talk to folks, everybody seemed to be under this belief that college campuses were forbidden locations for a firearm. But the reality is, public colleges and universities are not places that are protected under our law as being prohibited locations. The rub came in, though, when you talked about students, faculty, or staff at those institutions, because they were treated differently. While the law didn't make it a criminal offense for them to have a firearm, any one of those classes of people who were found to possess a firearm on that campus would be subject to expulsion from school if they were a student, or potentially termination from their jobs if they were a staff or faculty member. And so they didn't enjoy Second Amendment protection simply because of the policies of the individual institution. But those locations, again, were never protected locations to begin with. It was simply a matter of policy that made it problematic for people who had a direct connection to those institutions. Again, students, faculty, or staff. So under this new law, the key takeaway that really changes things is that students, faculty, and staff who possess a valid West Virginia concealed handgun license or a license or permit from a state with which West Virginia has a reciprocal agreement may now lawfully possess a concealed firearm, a concealed handgun, on public college and university campuses here in West Virginia. That presupposes that the person is doing so lawfully, that something hasn't arisen that makes them a prohibited person since the time that they got their license or permit, and now they're acting unlawfully. The idea here is to allow people who are lawfully able to possess a firearm and have a lawful and in force permit or license to carry a concealed handgun to have that handgun on the college campus while they're going about their daily activities there. So, of course, like any law we have, there are some limitations on how that applies and on the things that people can or can't do. One of those is that the statute specifies that areas of the campus or institution that are reserved exclusively for the use of a private entity, they're either leased, rented, or provided by the institution for that private entity, are areas where you cannot have a firearm, even under this new law. And so I think what they're talking about here, while it doesn't specify anything in the code, is probably an area that maybe is leased to a vendor that provides a service. Let's say perhaps a food service. And in order to conduct their operations under contract with that school, they need to have office space, areas for preparing and doing the things that they do under their contract. And so those areas that are under their exclusive control are restricted from this new Campus Self-Defense Act, meaning you can't carry a firearm into those types of areas. Of course, there are a number of other limitations, and it seems like this would be a good time to get into those, and we'll take a look at each of those particular restrictions that's laid out in the statute and talk a little bit about some of them that, to me at least, seem to have some good talking points behind them. The right to carry a concealed handgun on campus can be limited at an organized event taking place at a stadium or arena with a capacity of more than 1,000 spectators, at a daycare facility located on the property of the state institution of higher education, in the secure area of any building used by a law enforcement agency on the property of the state institution for higher education, in an area of the property of the state institution of higher education that has adequate security measures in place to ensure that pistols or revolvers are not carried by the public into the area. As used in this section, adequate security measures means the use of electronic equipment and armed personnel at public entrances to detect and restrict the carrying of any pistols or revolvers into the area, including but not limited to metal detectors, metal detector wands, or any other equipment used for similar purposes to ensure that pistols or revolvers are not carried in those areas by members of the public. Now this one essentially is saying that if the school has deemed that it's capable of making an area safe through the use of metal detector technology and armed personnel, that there's no need for you to worry about your own public safety, which of course is the entire idea behind the Campus Self-Defense Act, being able to take care of your own safety. The school is saying, hey, we have enough things in place that you don't need to worry about that in this area. You're safe from people in the public. However, the statute later says, in the event that there's a failure of that security that would lead to harm, there's not a right of liability against the institution for that failure. I know you don't even need to say it. I'm not going to get into it. But certainly I'd love to hear what your comments and thoughts are on that in the comments section below. It's a classic case of, well, we're going to make you safe. We're the government. Trust us. But if we don't, it's still not our fault anyway. That particular provision, I think, is one that it was important to take a moment to talk a little bit more about. And again, I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts in the comments below. In an on-campus room or rooms in which a student or employee disciplinary proceeding is being held, in sole occupancy offices on the campus, and in the buildings of the state institution of higher education. Sole occupancy office means a room with at least one door and walls that extend to the ceiling that is assigned to a single person as his or her workspace. This subdivision does not authorize a state institution of higher education to prohibit, regulate, or restrict faculty or staff members who hold a current and valid license to carry a concealed deadly weapon from carrying a concealed pistol or revolver in his or her assigned office. At a primary or secondary education school-sponsored function being held in a specific location on the property of the state institution of higher education that is rented, leased, or under the exclusive use of the West Virginia Department of Education, the West Virginia Secondary Schools Activities Commission, a county school board, or local public school for the actual period of time the function is occurring. At a private function that is being held in a specific location on the property of the state institution of higher education that is rented, leased, or under the exclusive use of an entity that is not affiliated with the state institution of higher education for the actual period of time the function is occurring. In any area on the property of the state institution of higher education where possession of a firearm is prohibited by state or federal law. In specifically designated areas in which patient care or mental health counseling is being provided. In high hazardous and animal laboratories, defined as laboratories with various explosive or flammable liquids, various types of highly magnetic equipment, animal research areas not generally open to the public. In on-campus residence halls, except common areas such as lounges, dining areas, and study areas. Now, with respect to residence halls, the statute does make it clear that if an employee of the institution has certain obligations, employment-related obligations, that require them to be present in a residence hall, that those people may in fact carry a concealed handgun, provided that they meet all the other requirements under this statute, while they are carrying out those duties. Now, if they're not present there in connection with their work obligations, then they would also likewise be prohibited from having the firearm in the residence area of the residence hall. Again, that's not talking about common areas, that's specifically in the rooms. So interestingly, the schools are also required to provide secure storage for students, faculty, and staff on campus. So anybody who has a firearm and is required to store it at some point during the course of their daily activities has a location that the school provides that is secure and designed solely for that purpose. So what that means is they have the option under the statute to provide locations on the campus where secure storage can be accomplished in a common area. And generally in some schools, and I know in particular at Fairmont State University, there will be rooms in 2 separate residence halls on the campus there that are equipped with gun safes, multiple gun safes, that may be rented by students, faculty, or staff. And when the person is going up into the room area, they would be required to store their firearm in one of those safes that was specifically rented to them. And so again, my understanding from talking with the police chief at Fairmont State is that these rooms have been redesigned and repurposed to now house a variety of safes where students can put their firearms when they're not up in their rooms. However, the statute does also allow schools the option to put a secure safe in the residence hall rooms themselves if they don't have a common area, such as what Fairmont State is doing. So the point is that in order to prevent the unsafe storage or unsecure storage of the firearm when the student or faculty or staff member is in an area where they can't have it, the school is obligated to provide some means of secure, safe storage that has restricted access just to the person who rents that particular safe. And so we are seeing that that was one of the big reasons for the delay in the implementation of this law, was that these schools had to make accommodations, decide how they were going to handle the storage issue, and then implement those storage practices. So that's something else that does have to be provided. Again, the school can charge for the use of those facilities, and the person is going to have to comply with that and pay a rent fee to be able to use those facilities to ensure that they don't carry their firearm into a location where it's prohibited. One other interesting point here is that open carry is prohibited on the campuses by people covered under this act. So you can't have your firearm openly visible, partially visible, and of course, like with anybody, you can't display the firearm in a manner that's designed to cause intimidation. It's brandishing. Of course, on our college campuses, you never know, they may try to make it something even more than that. But you have to be compliant with the idea that this provides for the concealed carry lawfully on campus, not the open carry on campus. So that's a quick overview of what this law entails. There's an awful lot in here really to break down and unpack. If you have questions about it, please get in touch. As always, my contact information is in the video description down below, and I'd love to hear from you if you do have specific questions. Leave a comment down below, and I try to read and respond to most of those, and I'm happy to do so if you have specific questions about this topic. If you haven't done so, please, I'd love to have you subscribe to the channel. Make sure if you do, you hit that bell icon so that you get notified of new videos when they drop. Hit the like button, share this video. This one's really important, folks. I would really appreciate your help coming alongside and getting this out to as many people as possible. It's a big topic that is really game-changing here for the Second Amendment community, and I want to make sure that people are aware that there is a resource here in the state that they can turn to in the event they have questions. Thanks for spending time with me today. I really appreciate that. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, take care and be safe.